Okay, so today we are going to look at the statement from the studio head. Also, there was a hotfix that came out the day afterwards, which I think the only thing really of note here is that, well, they fixed network accessibility issues for players over in Russia. And they added the ability to view enemy unit cards with left control and left mouse button, which is interesting. However, today we are going to be looking at this. And I don't expect this to be a very long video, but there is an attached YouTube video, and I did watch it. Only the first 8 minutes are of actual commentary. The rest, the other 26, give or take, is mainly just gameplay. And so I'm going to, I'd still recommend people to watch the video, especially since at the very start of the video they go through, they have like various cuts of the units in the new upcoming specialization that you see the units in the hangar. There's no stats attached to them, unfortunately, but you see the units in the hangar, which I think is kind of nice. Anyway, statement from the studio founder. This is almost certainly as a result of the last little over a month and a half of unrest, to put it politely, within the fan base. First from the anniversary update, and then update 1.1.1. I still think the anniversary update was better. Hello, comrades. For those hearing from me for the first time, my name is Sergei Kuzmin. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and I'm not butchering it. I am one of the founders of Steel Balakaya. I'm sorry, I never figured out how to pronounce the name of the studio. And some of you may know me by my old nickname, Sergei Samara. Again, I hope I pronounced that right. Some of you may have also watched my Wargaming Red Dragon videos roughly 7 to 10 years ago. Today, I wanted to talk openly and directly about the game and its future, just as things really are. What happened before? Looking back at the past year, we spent too long trying to make the gameplay as comfortable as possible, primarily for newcomers. To achieve that, we reduced lethality, increased TTK, slowed down aim times, and gradually moved away from the gameplay we originally wanted to create ourselves. Okay, I'm going to stop here very quickly, because when they say slow down aim times, what exactly do they mean? Do they mean like they have made artillery aim times longer? Or made tank aim times shorter? So are they talking about slowing down the aim time, or slowing down the aiming process, if that makes sense? I'd like a bit of clarification on that. I assume that they were that they're referring about making aim times longer. We reduced lethality, increased TTK, slowed down aim times. Also TTK is for those who are unaware, it's an acronym. It stands for time to kill. Slowed down aim times. I'm just thinking, but in the previous updates, I can't think of any real situation where they have slowed down the aim time I can't think of any situation in the previous updates where they have made units where they've reduced lethality. They've slowed down aim times, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head where they've done either those other 2 points. I'm not saying they haven't, I'm just saying I can't think of anything off the top of my head. And gradually moved away from the gameplay we originally wanted to create ourselves. Now, we now believe that this approach has run its course. Above all, player comfort should come from other areas, in-game tutorials, clear visualization of less obvious mechanics, and quality matchmaking that allows players to compete against opponents of a similar skill level and gradually learn the game. At the same time, more experienced players shouldn't have to sacrifice the quality and depth of their own gameplay simply to keep the barrier to entry low, eventually losing the enjoyment of the game after a couple hundred hours. However, it is fair to say that we cannot simply change everything overnight. It's not only about the risk of rushing into fairly controversial hypotheses, but also about the fact that many people simply don't like change. This is how we ended up in the current model of a public test branch. What has changed? Let me answer the main question right away. Who decides what changes make it from PTE to production? Or into production? Starting with patch 1.1.1 on July 30th, I am personally taking responsibility for all such decisions going forward. I will base them on my own vision as well as test results, statistics, and your feedback. Now, actually, no. I'll come back to that point later. Yes, this is a fairly difficult process. Changing the course of a project that has been evolving for many years is never easy, but I'm convinced that this is the right decision, the only right one. The idea behind this approach to game design is actually quite simple. Every unit is sufficiently effective within its intended role. While the right decision made by the player provide a significantly greater gameplay payoff, in practice this translates to 3 current areas of work. Hang on. The idea behind this new approach to game design is actually quite simple. Every unit is sufficiently effective within its intended role, while the right decision made by the player provides a significantly greater gameplay payoff. Okay, I'm just trying to follow along here. So they want to make everything good at least from my understanding of this, they want to make everything good in the thing that it's supposed to do, but you have to rely more on player skill and implementation to actually get a good play, or to get a good payoff, is from my understanding of what he's saying here. In practice, this translates into 3 current areas of work. You have gameplay improvements. All major changes will go through PTE. We will continue to work on increasing lethality, tactical depth, the predictability of game mechanics, and the balance between different ways to engage the opponent. New content. We decided to split the DLC release into 2 parts. New units, maps, and a couple of co-op missions will release in August. And the new units, maps, and a couple of co-op missions will release in August, while the single-player campaign and the remaining content will follow in the fall. I just love that they just drop a release month. Like, no fanfare to it, they just say, oh yeah, it's coming in August. Sunshine, at time of recording, it is August 22nd. You've got 9 days. You have a week and a half. Actually, you have less than a week and a half. I'm not saying they're not going to do it. I'm just saying, like, they don't give us any fanfare. Which, honestly, I find very amusing. This approach will allow us to release content updates more frequently without tying them to lengthy development of the campaign missions, while also giving you the option not to purchase full DLC if you're only interested in part of it. And then we have technical debt. Game performance has noticeably improved over the last couple of patches, and campaign saves and replays will be added in upcoming updates. Well, we're also continuing to work on network stability, quality of life features, and other technical improvements. I have one request. Please don't rush to conclusions about our move towards greater lethality. Try all changes for yourself in the upcoming PTE first, and then make sure to leave your feedback. To sum up, I'll say that the past year has been a real test for us. I'm grateful to all of you for your trust and for all the feedback you've shared following the patch. It's what gives us the strength to keep moving forward, to prepare for the next PTE iteration, and to work on the new DLC. This project really means a lot to us, so we experience all of its success and failures alongside you. See you again, and good luck on the battlefield. Steel. I can't pronounce that. Okay. I don't have. I have a couple of I don't have any issues right off the bat necessarily, but I do have a couple of observations that I wanted to make. And the first one is that if they're splitting the DLC into two parts, this probably means that they have the new specialization, the new scenarios, the new units, all that other stuff. That stuff's ready to go. It's just that the campaign is the problem that's taking them a while to actually produce. And as someone who has fiddled around with the scenario editor to a not insignificant degree, I'd like to think, I can tell you that it's not exactly simple making a campaign mission or making anything in the scenario editor, much less multiple campaign missions that are supposed to create a story. So I suspect that's the drag. That's what's taking so long. So they have decided, and I'm getting the impression from the way this paragraph is written, that they have made this decision fairly recently to just split it in half and then give us the two parts at two separate dates. Because if memory serves, they said that the new Russian DLC will come out in the summer, and I suspect that they want to release it before August to stick to that summer deadline, and then release everything else later, because they said that it's going to follow in the fall. Fall is not summer. Fall is also going to be closer to when the US DLC comes out. And the other thing I want to highlight is something that I don't necessarily think is a bad idea, but is a potentially dangerous idea, for lack of a better term. And this is this line. Starting with patch 1.1.1, I am personally taking responsibility for all such decisions going forward. Those decisions being what makes it into the base game. I will base them on my own vision as well as test results, statistics, and your feedback. Now, when it says I will base them on my own vision, I don't think that's necessarily a bad approach, but one thing that has always struck me, it's kind of odd, or not odd, but one thing that, how's the best way to phrase this? So, I've always looked at game developers kind of like customer service. Like, what you're doing is you are providing a service. And with the players being your customers, right? So, ideally, your primary your goal at any one time is to basically satisfy your customers. It is to provide services isn't the right word. It is to provide the best experience for your customers. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad way of looking at it. Granted, I'm no game developer, so I don't know the ins and outs of the whole process. But I remember bringing this point up with Edmund, one of the moderators on the Discord about a week ago. Yeah, it was about a week ago. A week or week and a half ago. About with all the issues in between the anniversary update and patch and update 1.1.1, why not the developers just put out a poll and they just put a poll out among the fan base asking which one they preferred more. And Edmund very politely explained that this isn't that simply put, it's not that simple, and that there are some fans who don't think that's a particularly good approach. Now, that doesn't make much sense to me because of the analogy that I just gave. Like, if I am providing a service to my customers, it would make sense to me to occasionally get feedback on what my customers prefer. And if there is an issue, like if some customers prefer one thing and other customers prefer another thing, it would make sense to me to try and get feedback onto what they like about those two things, so I can either pick one over the other, or I can try and satisfy as many people as possible. Apparently that's not the best approach, but like I said, I'm not a game developer, so I'm not entirely sure. Excuse me. Water. Well, the issue, well, I say issue, the concern that I have here is that if he's basing it on his own vision, I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea, but I'm mildly concerned that it's going to run into making changes that he likes rather than changes that are good for the game as a whole. That's my overall concern. Not saying this is going to happen, that's just my concern. Now, at the same time, I can't really say that it's necessarily a bad approach either. And honestly, it's an approach that I can't really even say I don't like, because I honestly think that if you try to make something for everyone, you're not going to make anything that, or if you try and make something that satisfies everyone, you're not going to make something that can satisfy anyone. Honestly, just look at Hollywood. They've tried to make movies that can satisfy everybody all at once, and it just satisfies nobody. So you have to figure out what you want, like what you want, because you can't make it for everyone. So I honestly can't think that, I don't think that the approach is necessarily bad. I'm concerned that there might be a bit of a disconnect between what Mr. Kuzmin wants and what the game and what the player base as a whole want. That's my concern. And if I'm going to be entirely honest, I can't say that I'm completely non-biased in this situation, because from the wording of this article, it seems to imply that Mr. Kuzmin signed off on Update 1.1.1. And anyone who have seen my recent Broken Arrow videos knows my opinion on Update 1.1.1. So I don't know. Personally, there are things in Update 1.1.1 that I do not particularly care for, as I have said. However, honestly, giving it some thought, I think, and I might have mentioned this in one of my previous videos, I think the thing that harms Broken Arrow the most is the fact that multiplayer balancing is killing the single-player experience. And I don't know. I would prefer that. I don't know if that's something that the developers are actually looking into, but I think it's something that should at least be considered. So, personally, and this is going to be some armchair quarterbacking here because I do not know anything about actual game development, so I don't know how simple this would be. I don't think it would be simple. It doesn't sound like it would be simple. But the way, honestly, I'd solve that problem is to do something like, kind of like how Black Ops 1, that gem of a video game, if anyone remembers it, how when you installed it on your computer, you had two applications. You had one which was for single player and zombies mode, and then you had the other one which was for multiplayer. And I'm not necessarily saying there needs to be two Broken Arrow applications, but the idea of splitting the single player plus co-op and the multiplayer. Another example I could think of is how From Software handled multiplayer in Elden Ring. When they released the Coliseum update for Elden Ring, they split the single player balancing and the multiplayer balancing into two separate tracks. And that, honestly, I think is the approach that needs to be applied to this game. This game has some. It has a lot of. It has a lot of potential for single player gameplay, I think. I genuinely believe it does. But I also believe that the multiplayer balancing, which I'd like to point out, is necessary in order to have a competitive and fair multiplayer environment, is harming the single player experience. So I think the best approach is to just basically split them in half. And I don't know if that's something that the developers are going to do. I don't know. Heck, I don't even know if it's something that they've thought of. So, but that's just my 2 cents on the subject. Overall, I'd like to consider myself cautiously optimistic regarding the whole thing. They have a new PTE which they're going to release soon, I assume, given the way that they were talking about it, where they want to up lethality. I don't exactly know what that's going to entail. I guess we can take a look at it and see what's going to be in it. I assume there's going to be a new update coming out, probably around the end of the month, about the same time that the new specialization drops. So I mean I will be looking at the new specialization, and I will be looking at the new update. I mean, I'm going to be looking at any new update. But right now, I kind of feel like Broken Arrow is in... It's in a state of flux. And honestly, I've been hesitant to make Broken Arrow content as a result of that. Because it kind of feels like everything is moving. Everything is unsteady right now. And if I'm going to be entirely honest, I've kind of lost my drive, for lack of a better term, to make Broken Arrow content. As of right now, I kind of want things to settle down. I kind of want things to settle down, and then see where things go from there. So I'll probably wait until at least the next update or the release of the Russian spec to actually do anything. To do anything serious, for lack of a better term. But I do know that I do want to play these two. I do want to play these two scenarios at some point. So anyway. Oh, that's only excluding the decks that, that's only excluding the decks that I can actually run. The ones that are valid. That's only including the decks that are valid. Like, when I say that I've lost my drive, here's an example of what I mean. I have not adjusted any of my decks since the anniversary update. Like, even when the anniversary update came out, I have not adjusted my decks. And granted, I didn't adjust my decks when the anniversary update came out because they said that we're going to release a new update soon. So I didn't want to touch it because I knew I was probably going to have to adjust my decks again. I didn't adjust my decks after update 1.1.1 came out because, honestly, why? It's just like, I don't know. Anyway, so like I said, I'm probably going to wait until the next update comes out, see where things sit from there, and then move forward. Or when the DLC comes out. Those are probably going to happen about the same time. Anyway, thank you for watching, and that's pretty much going to be it for this.